You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cricket Podcast for an IPL special. It's retention day-ish. We're a day late, a couple of days late. Who cares? And we're going to be going over all the details from all 10 teams. I'm Jack Hope. I am joined by an elite squad today. Ross, how you doing?
Yeah, the IPL retentions have done pretty well on the podcast. I mean, retaining Max was touch and go, but we've managed to keep big hitter Dan Weston in our midst, so it's all good.
Yeah, we've got Max. How you doing, Max?
Yeah, very well. I mean, I thought about leaving for the grey cricketer, but turns out they couldn't convince me that they would definitely make me captain. So I have stuck around.
Yeah, fair. It's probably a good call. And we've got Dan. Obviously the uncapped player, so he'll be on the baby amounts of money. But he is in Canada, so how are you doing, Dan?
Yeah, I'm good. I've been released by Punjab Kings ahead of the auction, and I'm now available for Cricket Podcast duty.
Cool. So what we're going to be doing today is going through all 10 teams, as I said, talking about the players that they've retained, what purse they'll have left, what they'll need to do at the auction to build themselves a decent team, and we'll be grading them on a as yet undetermined scale. So we'll be workshopping the grading system and then using that. I can't imagine that will go wrong. That seems like a foolproof plan that we've got there. The way we'll do this, it'll be reverse order. So we'll be starting with the worst team in the IPL from last year. That is the Mumbai Indians. And then working our way up the table to top, KKR, and also champions. Yeah, so it works really well. Ross, before we get going, do you want to explain what an IPL retention is for anybody that's maybe been listening to our test match coverage over the last probably 4 or 5 months? And now we're about to drop this on them. So
Yeah, so for the IPL, there's an auction happening in Saudi Arabia, because obviously that's completely logical. And that's going to be happening at the end of this month, or probably the start of December, because the IPL just makes up when they do things, so that's absolutely fine.
Like we do. It's fine.
Yeah. Exactly. It's agile. It's agile delivery for those consultants who are listening to this. And each of the IPL franchises gets to retain players ahead of the auction. And this year, they slightly mixed it up. I think historically they've chosen like 4, but they've as with all these things, they get to do whatever they like, the BCCI. So this year, they could retain up to 6 players. I think 4 of those could be capped and 2 uncapped. I might get this wrong. Dan is our resident expert, and he can correct me if I'm wrong. And you also had There we go. See, they're already adding expertise, which is what we love. But the right to match is back. So the gaps that they leave in their retention, they can actually do right to match when it comes to the auction. And so that means that if another team bids on said player, they can say, no, we're going to right to match. And then I think there's a little bit of hijinks where they can decide on how much they actually go and bid for them on that front. So kind of relatively clear, I think.
Yeah, clear enough, isn't it? Let's kick off then. We're going to start with the Mumbai Indians. They finished bottom last year, despite having some pretty good players and being backed by the richest man in India. So it was kind of funny, to be honest, wasn't it? They have retained Jasprit Bumrah, Surya Kumar Yadav, Hardik Pandya, Rohit Sharma, and Tilak Varma for a range of money. They've kind of banded all the main players between 16 and 18 crore, and then Tilak Varma comes in on just 8. That leaves them with 45 crore of their 120 at the auction, 1 right to match, and a team to build. Who would like to dive in first? Dan, why don't we have you, the expert opinion first for Mumbai? We've got to make sure we get Mumbai right. They're one of the big teams in the IPL. Yeah. When it gets to, I don't know, whoever, LSG, we can just say whatever we want. No blowback. Mumbai, we've got to nail this bit.
Okay, so I think predictably to start with, they kept the vast majority of their big name core players. If we go back to the ahead of the 22 mega auction, they actually retained their maximum 4 players as well, and then spent a fortune on getting Ishan Kishan back as well, which completely ruined their chance of having a strong bowling attack. And I think that they could be going down that same road again. They went for 5 retentions and possibly could have gone for the extra uncapped option in someone like Nehal Wadera. but they didn't. They released Ishan Kishan, they released Tim David, they released Joel Katsir, and paid 16 crore for Rohit Sharma and his non-boundary strike rate of about 35. Which, just for clarification for those listeners who don't understand that metric, that's worse than Chris Gale before he retired. So he doesn't get runs apart from boundaries, basically, or many runs. How is that Hardik Rohit dynamic going to play out? Obviously, Hardik they've committed to keeping him as captain. Bumrah was probably good value for them. I think the 18 odd crore that he was kept at should have been the most expensive retention easily, but he went for about 5 crore less than Heinrich Klaassen, who we'll go on to talk about in a bit. So there's 45 crore left to buy a team with basically needing bowlers. Rohit doesn't make any sense from an on-pitch performance perspective. They're in the same position as they were in 2022. They're going to need bowlers again with no money. And that's where I feel.
Tell us what you really think, Dan. That's Mumbai. Ross, some work to do, not loads of money to do it with. I mean, we'll get through this, but a lot of the teams have spent quite a lot. There's a couple that are going to be walking around with a fat wallet, but a lot of teams have retained quite a few players, so they're not necessarily going to be blasted out of every auction, but they are going to need a lot of bowlers. Do you like or not like what they've done?
I don't like the retention of Rohit Sharma. I think it's one of those things. The IPL is it's an old league now. I know it's relatively young, but it's been around for 14, 15 seasons. Do we really need to be still picking players kind of just on the brand value? Like Rohit Sharma is captain of India, kind of get that, but Mumbai Indians have already gone down this route. Like it was logical to keep hold of Sky, Bumrah, and Hardik, as Dan said, and Tilak Varma, still an expensive kind of uncapped player there. But it's just that they're making the same mistakes. It's an emotional decision to keep Rohit, and I think it really limits what they're going to do in the auction. And they, like last year, even then in the season before, the Mumbai fans can't be sitting there going, "Oh, I really enjoyed watching Rohit Sharma, but my team getting pounded into the dirt, and Piyush Chawla being our best bowler." Other than Bumrah, obviously. So it's a little bit, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, kind of thing.
Max, I've got a rules question for you, and you might not get this one. So, Dan's here if we need help. Piyush Chawla, the big man, he's been mentioned. Is he now so far from an India cap that he could be right to matched for a very, very low price come auction time? And are they going to get that band back together?
Well, maybe it's 5 years, isn't it? Is the limit?
Yeah.
So has Piyush Chawla played for India in the last 5 years? Is the question. I don't know that answer off the top of my head.
I don't think so.
I would bet on no. If Piyush Chawla has played for India in the last 5 years, I would be absolutely stunned. But it's possible he played in some D team tour of Bangladesh when everyone was out during COVID or something, which would be quite funny. But I mean, I agree. I agree with Ross. I think Rohit Sharma's the elephant in the room. It's all about value for money, isn't it? Are you going to get that output from someone else who you could spend 2 crore on? And the answer is probably yes, or maybe slightly less. But the money you get back from it is just worthwhile. But the one thing I would say for MI, the saving grace with the lack of money they've got and the amount they've got to do, is that they haven't retained any overseas players. It's all domestic players. So they're not going to have to go and fight over the odds to get an entirely Indian bowling lineup. They can, try and find some bargains in the overseas market, which often end up being the case as you get a few rounds in. So there's hope there that they'll be able to build something up from that point of view.
Yeah, that's true. There's quite a few teams have gone down that route. There's one notable exception, and we'll definitely spend some time talking about them later on. But a lot of teams do seem to have prioritised local talent, which I suppose does kind of make sense. Are we ready to grade Mumbai, or does anyone have any more opinions?
I think if
they do.
Here, go on, Dan.
Yeah, Piyush Chawla last played for India. It wasn't even 5 years ago. It was over 10 years ago.
Okay, well, there we go. They can get him
Should be 15, really, but there you go.
He's coming back.
He's coming back.
I mean, Ishan Kishan is there. They love him, right? Why did they not bring him back instead of Rohit Sharma? That would have made more sense to me as a retention. like wicketkeeper and a left-handed batter. Like that just makes far more logical sense. And what is the bet? They look to blow over 10 crore on Ishan Kishan, who probably, if I'm perfect, is probably going to go for more than that in the auction.
I think
he's
there's
gonna go
definitely a possibility.
for-
How much, Dan? Sorry, I think I spoke over you. What's the estimate?
About I reckon 14, 15. I think it went for 14-ish last time, and obviously now we know that there's more money this time. In terms of teams' budgets and stuff. So I reckon Ish and Kishan about 14, 15. So if they want to keep him, they're going to have to blow about a third of their current purse to do so, and again leave them with no ballers.
They should just spend a few crore on Phil Salt and be done with it.
They're going to go down the RCB Galacticos route, aren't they? That's what they're doing. Anyway,
so
I think we're ready to let's rate.
Yeah, cool. Right, there we go. We've done Mumbai. Overspent on Rohit. That's what we think. Some other good players went local. Going to need some bowlers at the auction. Ross, we'll start with A, B, C, or F as the option, so you can.
I like that. That's good.
Yeah,
I was hoping we'd go like stars. I was going to give them 3 stars out of 5, but A, B, C, or F. So that would be a B. I reckon it's a B for me. They've retained the most important people, which is a good thing. The Rohit Sharma thing is, in my opinion, an aberration. But at the same time, they do have the best T20 bowler in the world. They do have the best T20 batsman in the world, and they've got, if he's fit, a pretty decent all-rounder in Hardik Pandya, and Tilak Varma's pretty decent. So they've limited themselves at the auction. But yeah, 3 stars is my thing. So B/C in your ratings.
Max.
Yeah, I was thinking the same. So 3 out of 5, 6 out of 10, B, whichever one.
I had actually given every team a rating of 6 out of 10 before. As a rating out of 10 before this pod. But I'm going to be a bit harsher.
Yep.
I think 6 out of 10 is actually a C. So the reason why I'm going to go for a C Mumbai is because for 2 reasons. One is that Rohit's really overpriced, and it shows that the emotional decision making that they're still not moving away from. And 2 is the fact that they, as Ross said, was it fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. And they basically made the same mistakes they made in 2022. They've gone against the drivers of success, which is a strong bowling attack. And I think that they might have a problem at the auction assembling a strong bowling attack.
Maybe it's because they've had an emotional year, the Ambanis. The wedding has got them too excited. And maybe it's just all based upon that. And they're just like, do you know what? Well, our baby, Rohit Sharma, we can't let him leave the nest.
Yeah. Maybe he gave a really good speech at the wedding or something like that. We don't know. We don't know what happens behind closed doors. Maybe that's or he was a great waiter. Like
duet with Rihanna. Who knows?
I'd like to see that. Right, next we're going to move on. That's Mumbai done. Next team, the Punjab Kings. They retained 2 players, Shashank Singh and Prab Simran Singh, for 5.4 and 4 crore each. So that means they're going to take a whopping 110.5 crore out of their 120 to the auction. They release everyone else. They're the only team to release as few players, which is going to give them a lot of room to rebuild the team, and they might need that room. Max, we're going to start with you this time. Yeah. Punjab Kings, 2 players.
It's so Punjab, isn't it? It's everything you want from Punjab Kings. They've nailed the Comedy Kings vibe, and they've got so much scope to mess it up, and that is what we live for. Because there's a lot of logic behind this, I think. And with a deft hand, they could do something really special at this auction. Like you say, they've got 110.5 crore to play with, which is, double half the teams that are left. They can really blow some people out of the water. And if like the auction card, the order that people come out sort of plays into their favor, and some of the other teams blow their load quite early on, and gives them a lot of scope to pick people up and just basically outbid people and leave them no choice. There's, they've got scope there, or they can just basically decide who they want and get them, as long as they pick the right people. But this is Punjab Kings, and we know that that's not the way they operate. So it could go either way. But it's I think it's smart, because they had this situation where I think they hired a budding analyst for an auction strategy, and they came up with a plan of how they wanted to play cricket. And it didn't go brilliantly, but it looked like it was making some strides in the way they wanted to play cricket. And then they ripped it all up completely at a mini auction and spent all the money in the world on Sam Curran and a bunch of other guys. So they're now in a situation where they can probably get some of those people back a bit cheaper. They've got 4 right to matches to play with, so they can use those, use that flexibility nicely as well to sweep some of them out from under other teams' feet. And it gives them so much flexibility. But obviously with flexibility comes the ability to get it wrong. And I think my favorite thing about the whole thing, they've retained Prabhsimran Singh, who's obviously famed as a member of Dan's fever dream when he was in hospital and scoring hundreds left, right, and centre. And the other one they retained is Shashank Singh, who was their top scorer, but also they signed by accident, supposedly. They signed the wrong Shashank Singh. And now half of their attentions is a guy that they signed by accident. It's everything you could ask for and more.
Yeah, I can see why they've done what they're doing, but I wonder whether because teams can retain more players this time, and because teams have got probably a little bit smarter and seem to have targeted local talent a lot more for those retentions, I wonder whether there's going to be that much at the auction for them to go and pick up. So there's a few big names knocking around. We talked about Ishan Kishan already. Rishabh Pant is in there. They've released Arshdeep. Yeah, you'll expect. Yeah, I mean, Siraj sort of fine. Mohammed Shami, probably a couple of years left in him. Dan, they're going to have a load of money. They've definitely zigged when everyone else has zagged. Is that going to actually be usable, or are they going to get right to matched here and there on some of the big players and end up picking India D?
No. Okay, so here's where I stand on this. 110.5 crore auction. I think Max mentioned it, over double some teams, and actually is almost 30 crore more than the next highest budget, which is RCB at 83. Now, look, I'm a big believer in big stack strategy, big stack bully strategy at auction, where basically you can dictate the terms of how players are going to play. You're going to players are going to cost. You can manipulate other teams. You can really push teams around. It was a strategy that I was very, very strong on ahead of 2022. So maybe I should take the credit for this. I don't know. And they remember the game theory lecture that I gave them about this ahead of 2022. And I think really the key for Punjab is how they wield that big stack. So basically, if they go out and buy 3, 4, 5 players in the first two sets, and then what I would call must-have players, so like, blow 10 crore Mitch Marsh or something like that, which is like, I think it's something that a Punjab team in the past probably would have done, like back in the day. Only really pick up the premium options and then keep that stack for the sort of later sets 3, 4, 5, 6 and onwards. Then they can really, really make a big splash at this auction. So I think a lot of it's really hard to grade them actually. I think because success is going to be completely determined by their approach and whether they look to. I think there's enough players in the marketplace for them to still assemble a really strong squad. I don't buy into that sort of India D argument. Maybe Rishabh Pant didn't get retained by Delhi because Ponting's already offered him a big slab at the auction for Punjab, for example. So that could be one example. There's Shreyas Iyer, who they might want as a captain. Ishan Kishan, I know that they were quite keen on before. I'm not saying that these are players that I would necessarily advocate. I'm just saying that there's players in the market. They might look to bring back Sam Curran or Harshal Patel or Rabada. Definitely, I would be very surprised if they didn't try and go heavy on Arshdeep Singh. And probably, I guess they thought that 18 crore was too much for him. There's Butler, there's Chahal, there's Maxwell, there's Cameron Green, Siraj, Marco Janssen. There's a lot of other players. There's Harry Brook, there's Noor Ahmed, there's Phil Salt, Nishish Rana. Quinton de Kock, Stoinis, Naveen, Tim
You
David.
haven't said KL Rahul yet, Dan.
No, I have not. Yeah.
Assume that was just a mistake.
The next Punjab Kings
Absolutely.
captain.
Yeah.
I mean, it could
Will
happen.
Jacks, Gun, Bhuvi Kumar. What I'm saying is that I probably listed like 25, 30 players there who they could easily target at an auction. They've got the money to do that. So the quality of the players in this auction is definitely out there.
Good. We're going to grade this team quickly, and then we're going to take a quick break and then move on to part 2 for some more teams. We'll do reverse order this time. Dan, you get to go first. A, B, C, or F?
I can say it's hard to grade. I'm going to say C because I don't necessarily have the confidence in them to wield that big stack in an efficient way. But I would be extremely pleasantly surprised if they do.
Maximus?
Yeah, well, it's Schrodinger's grading, isn't it? It's both. It's simultaneously an A and an F.
Ross?
Oh, it's an A. It's literally 10 out of 10. Like literally, what you want, what you want in the auction is a complete lunatic at the table. Like so the hijinks is going to happen at the auction.
All in.
Yeah, you literally just like, do you know, their owner might well phone up and be like, "I fucking hate that guy at CSK. Beat him on this person," and they just can. They literally just can. Not even a player they need. They literally can just be like that. What's likely to happen, though, is that they'll probably end up leaving about 20 crore on the table and shutting their laptops.
Yeah.
So that's probably what
or spending like 18 crore on Tushar Deshpande.
I can see them going big on Mitchell Santner after what he did last week. Like, someone's going to do it, and I think Punjab, they're definitely in the run. They don't call them the Kings of Comedy for nothing. I don't know. I probably give them a C. If I were them, I think I would rather be sitting there with Arshdeep retained, even if they think they paid a little bit too much for him. But that's the difference between a B and a C for me. Anyway, let's take a break. We'll be back in 2 seconds with the next team. I can't remember who finished 8th in the IPL last year, so it will be a surprise.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Cricket Podcast. So we're going through the IPL 2025 retentions. We've done 2 teams. We've done Mumbai and Punjab. Now we're going to move on to the Gujarat Titans, the Ahmedabad Bad Boys. Before we do, though, Ross, I need you to tell us about Manscaped. What is your favourite thing about Manscaped?
They are excellent and below the waist grooming. And I had a medical today. So yesterday, to be respectful of the doctor who was giving my medical, I used my Manscaped product and gave myself a bit of a shear. So you don't want to you want to have respect for the people who are going to give you a health.
Did the doctor appreciate that?
Well, he did not appreciate it. He didn't comment. So those are those things. But you know, when your testicles are in a man's hands, you need to make sure that you are doing everything right and making sure that he can check for lumps, because you know, testicular cancer is a real killer, Max. So let's not joke around. Manscaped.com. Use code CricketPod and you'll get 20% off with free worldwide shipping.
Good work, Matt. Good work.
Don't forget to check your balls.
Do that as well. Yeah. Health advice on the Cricket Podcast. Gujarat Titans. Look, here's who they retained: Rashid Khan, Shubman Gill, Sai Siddharthan, Rahul Tewatia, just for the hell of it, and Shahrukh Khan. Again, I mean, I really like the Tewatia retention just for vibes. The Shahrukh Khan, it's
cheap, mate. He's cheap. 4 crore for Tewatia.
Yeah, it's funny
It's
as
cheap.
well, isn't it? It's funny. They've done well. Maybe the big news is that Mohammad Shami wasn't retained. Obviously, he was injured a lot last year, injured now, but he's had his hair replaced, so he looks like a younger man, and that gives me the confidence that he will have the confidence to return to his best. I think that's a big mistake. They've got 69 crore for the auction. Ross, you get to go first on the Gujarat Titans.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that Rashid Khan managed to beat out the Prince, that is Shubman Gill for the highest spot, but Rashid Khan is Rashid Khan, right? I did laugh when Shahrukh Khan was retained, purely in the fact that I just don't think he's actually as good as people says he is. But uncapped player, and they're going
He's
into
a great
this
actor.
great actor. But again, I think they've got a core of domestic talent that they can work with well, and then Rashid Khan's gonna, he's gonna. With Gujarat Titans, they're putting themselves in a pretty decent position. 69 crore is also a decent enough pot to work with, whilst retaining the core of their leadership team. I actually think that they've done a pretty reasonable job here. And if you look at all like the Reddit, all like the Reddit forums, all of Twitter, and all that kind of stuff, but everyone like on Twitter. It's just like 4 crore bargain, mate. And they're almost like their financial analyst had been just like, but he's getting money underneath the table. It's just like, who gives a shit? Like, genuinely, who gives a shit? Like, all these people talking about, oh, they'll be earning way more and all this kind of stuff. I don't care. I just don't give a shit. But well played. I think they've done well here.
It's interesting. I did that with Mumbai. Like, I don't know this for sure. But I did think some of those players could probably have earned more money than they were offered and accepted at Mumbai. Dan, what do you think of Gujarat Titans? To go back to the team we're talking about.
Yeah, so Gujarat, I think they've actually done pretty well actually with these retentions. Getting Rashid Khan for not an insane amount of money is good business. Getting Gill as a second retention, I think, is really good business as well, because I'm sure both of them would have wanted that top slot. I know that was a factor as to why Rashid Khan left Sunrisers, for example, ahead of 2022. I think that the Twati is a good pickup at 4 crore. I'd be very, very surprised if there was any additional payments to that. I don't think that that's probably about his market value, and maybe his market value for GT is higher than that, given the amount of games that he's won and the vibes that he's given them over this last cycle. Shahrukh Khan at 4, I'm like meh about. I'm probably not as much of a buyer as Shahrukh Khan as most people, because I'm not a massive fan of like a 6 or a 7 who doesn't bowl and really has low match involvement. Shami going back in the auction will be interesting, depending on his fitness. They've let a few good players go as well, Saika Shaw, Noor Ahmed. Maybe they might try and pick up a Miller back as well in the auction. So I think solid business from them overall, and perhaps, and this is I think a theme with LSG as well, is that maybe they're not quite laden with the emotional baggage that some of the longer term franchises have had, and they've been able to make what I call more business and sort of smart decisions as opposed to the emotional ones.
Objective.
Yeah. So they're going to have one right to match in the auction. They've got the 69 crore to play with, which means they should have some options to spend. Max, your thoughts on Gujarat?
Yeah, pretty good, I think.
No bowlers.
No, Mohammed Shami is the big miss for them. But I think the points you were making about Rashid Khan having the top spot and Shubman Gill the second spot probably play into that a bit, especially with the injury issues that Mohammed Shami had. So overall, I think it's pretty good. I agree. Shahrukh Khan probably not. It's probably not really worth retaining, but it's cheap, so it probably doesn't matter, right? I reckon he's the kind of guy.
It's not a bad mistake.
A bunch of other teams would probably, if you let him go, a bunch of other teams would probably bump that price up to more than it should be. I think so. I don't mind that. And Sisa Darson at 8.5 as well as a kind of, it's a safe bet for a potentially reasonably high ceiling. I'm not convinced that he's got the power to really accelerate the innings like some of the other guys around, but he's a very exciting cricketer. So.
Gutted to see Ridham and Saha not on the list, Max.
Whoa! Well, you need to sort your microphone out.
Sort your microphone out, right?
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
Absolute shocker.
Yeah.
Embarrassing.
Railway Tannoy.
Yeah. Overall, I think it's good. And like you say, Rashid Khan, 18 crore, I think is very good value indeed. So yeah, I'm good. I'm pleased with what they've done for themselves, and they've got a decent amount of money to spend as well. So good work.
Cool.
Good work.
Right, let's blast through some gradings because I have to leave in half an hour, and we've still got 7 teams to do. Matt, you go first.
Yep. I think a high B for me. B plus.
I'll give him a B as well. Dan.
I'm a bit more punchy. I'm gonna go A minus.
Oh, added an extra grade. So
yeah.
I don't know I don't know if I like that. That's going to muddy the statistical waters. But yeah, there we go. We've got A minus now, and Ross.
Fluid. I agree with Dan. I think they've actually done really well for these teams. Hopefully, my audio is not coming through my webcam as it was a second ago. So apologies.
Okay.
I'm using my laptop from university pretty much, right? So this is like a decade-old laptop. So it's an absolute heap of shit. So apologies.
Yeah. If you all buy some Manscaped product, though, we'll be able to pay for Ross's new.
Exactly. But I would, and random account in the live chats is highlighted. I would like to see them pick up Noor Ahmed again, and Sai Kishore was kind of left out of that retention list as well, who I can imagine them kind of potentially going back in for. So good retention strategy from GT.
Right, next on the list, we have the other not that new but still newish new boys. Lucknow Super Giants, they've retired 5 players. Nicholas Puran with a big payday, 21 crore for him. Bishnoi, Mayank Yadav, the speedster, Mohsin Khan, and Ayush Bad Dhoni. That will give them 69 crore to play with at the auction as well. They'll have 1 right to match for an uncapped player. It's goodbye to KL Rahul, Stoinis de Kock, and Krunal Pandya, Bad Pandya. What do we think about this, Dan?
I'm kind of cool with it generally. Obviously, the same. It's interesting because both the new teams have gone with 5 retentions and both got 69 to spend at the auction. I'm a big fan of the release of KL Rahul. I don't think that he represents good value for money anymore at a high price point. Mayank Yadav, it could be a steal or waste of money because we just don't know how many times he's going to get on the pitch. But if he gets on the pitch consistently, he could be one of the best bowlers in the comp. The uncapped players, I'm a bit meh about, but I don't mind it. They might try and buy back a couple at the auction, like a Stoinis or Krunal Pandya. More bowling focused than most, with 3 out of their 5 retentions being bowling options, which is aligned with drivers of success for the IPL. So I like that. Puran is a little bit pricey, but I think you know what you're going to get with him, a world-class player. And I think overall pretty decent business.
I still think they're quite boring. That's what I would say. But I think they're a boring team to watch. They play at a boring ground. I like Puran. Puran's good.
Now, what they've retained could change that, right? Like Puran's great. Ravi Bishnoi is good fun. Mayank Yadav could be completely electric. Like Jen says, if he gets on the pitch, it'll be incredible. He was like the story of the IPL last year, wasn't he? When he came in and absolutely ruined batter after batter. So they've got the potential to put together a really exciting side here. It's just whether the pitches that they play on will allow them to do it.
Yeah. No, I'm still leaning on the boring side. I mean, like I can see objectively they've done well here. Like I think maybe the best. I think there's the Mayank Yadav. We're going off a few games where he looked amazing. We don't know whether he'll be able to bowl that fast all the time. We don't know whether he'll be injured. But I can see that they have done a good thing. But I am still. I don't know what I wanted them to do.
You burned by 2 years of LSG.
Yeah,
and that's understandable.
I don't know what. To be honest, there's nothing they could have done. They can't retain a player that they don't have, or erase my memory.
Get rid of King Legend, and they have done that.
Yeah, I suppose that is a step in the right direction. Ross, you look like you're gagging to say something.
Their owner did come out and pretty much throw shade at KL Rahul by the looks of things. Kind of said we need players who put the team first ahead of themselves. So this is a person who, when he's setting up the franchise, he wanted to make sure that the initials were the same as his for the team. So it's quite an interesting thing to come out and say. But that's if you were wondering why KO was, it's for the team. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think they've done okay. I'm still not a massive buyer of Bodoni, if I'm perfectly honest. He's kind of fine, but like it was exciting when he was like in the first season. Oh, this guy is quite excited, but genuinely quite boring last year. So big season for him coming up.
But it's only 4 crore. It's not
Right.
a big deal.
Let's do some gradings. I'll go first. I think they actually have done quite well. I will maybe even give them an A.
Ooh,
I think
agree.
relative
it's
to
an
what
A.
they could have done. Yeah, Max
Yeah.
got an A. Dan,
Yeah.
B plus.
B plus, boring plus. And Ross,
yeah, not as good as Gujarat Titans. So yeah, in the B category for me.
cool, fair enough. We're going to go on to an interesting one now. It is the Delhi Capitals. They retain 4 players: Akshar Patel, Kuldeep Yadav, Tristan Stubbs, and Abhishek Paral. That means they'll have 73 crore at the auction. They'll have 2 rights to match, one on a capped player, one on an uncapped. The big news, probably, well, no, definitely the big news, is that they have not retained Rishabh Pant. He will go into the auction pool. Now, they could, in theory, right to match him back, and they'll, you'd think, have the purse. And obviously, they won't be bidding for him. So, as one of the bigger stacks, so to speak, there'll be one fewer team to drive the price up. But the fact that they've released him in the first place suggests that
When he was captain.
maybe there's a little bit of a falling out or a disagreement, a decision by one or both to move in a different direction. Dan, where did Delhi stand, having disposed of, well, their A-list star?
Yeah, I mean, it's a real surprise. The rumours kind of came out a day or two before the retention deadline, and I didn't see that coming at all. And I think it's the biggest talking point out of all of the retention release and the releases that the Pant is going to be, well, unless they buy him back for a lot of money, no longer at DC. I would be really surprised if he didn't end up at PBKs or RCB, the 2 teams with the biggest budget. I think he'd be amazing for PBKs, and it's a great fit. A few guys in the chat have also sort of mentioned about the Ponting fit at PBKs. Just looking at that would be Notorious, who is claiming that there would be a mini Australia at Punjab under Ricky Ponting, and Cricket Tashan Pant will be punter's captaincy option as well. So I can see him really ending up at Punjab Kings. That's a big blow for them, no doubt about that. They could have perhaps kept someone like a Rashik Salamdar as an uncapped player for not a lot of money as well, which they missed out on. I was kind of a little bit surprised they didn't keep one of Mukesh Kumar, Khalil Ahmed. I would have kept Khalil Ahmed because I think left-arm pacers are pretty scarce in the marketplace. Mukesh Kumar, I probably don't rate as high as most others. But then they might look to buy back Harry Brook or Jake Fraser-McGurk or an Anrik Norkia. The spin duo of Kuldeep and Axar, really, really important retentions, and they achieved that. They'll need a captain as well, with no Pant. There's a lot of work to do, and I think all eyes are on the auction for them, really.
Is Tristan Stubbs actually that good, Dan?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Yeah, look, I think he's good. Is he 10 crore?
10 crore?
10 crore good? Ugh. I can see it from both sides. Sorry, I'm
I think that means he's
I'm okay
probably
with-
about the right value. I didn't look
okay.
at Stubbs and think that's terrible retention. And because he's an overseas player, they're a little bit more disposable, frankly. Like, if it doesn't work out, fine, 10 crore in the next mini auction. Not the end of the world. And 10 crore out of 120, it's not what it used to be when it comes to money. Max, do you have any thoughts on Rishabh Pant?
Yeah, I think it's insane.
How much will he go for at the auction?
I reckon he'll go for about 20 crore.
Most expensive player.
Nicholas Puran's at 21 on on LSG. I think Pant's going to be in that ballpark. I think you're looking at someone who can be your captain, a wicket keeper, an explosive batter who is domestic. It's a very tantalizing prospect and left-handed. I think it's a real. I think it's a shock that they've got rid of him. I think it's a mistake that they've got rid of him. It does feel like something has happened behind the scenes, doesn't it? There's, like all the Ponting chat is a good point, and I think it's robbed them of what could have been like a half decent set of retentions. I think Abhishek Patel did reasonably well when he played for them last year, and like you said, Akshar and Kuldeep in particular is back to his best. Has been fantastic at taking wickets. Akshar has developed his game with the bat as well. He's become much more of a force, even though maybe not as good in the role that DC want him to play, but he's still very good. So I think it could have been quite good, and I think the fact they don't have Pant makes it a little disappointing.
I reckon Pant is going to go for the record fee. That's what I think.
Yeah, I'm
26 crore.
Oh, the highest at the auction, yeah.
I think definitely go for the highest at the auction. What was the record? It was 25 last year, 20, right?
Yeah, around that.
So a new record would be, it could happen.
I'm not saying a new record. I'm saying the record for this current upcoming auction.
Oh, yeah, I think, I think there's a pretty decent chance of that, unless someone goes all in for Deshpande, of course, which
could happen.
Which is a possibility that we shouldn't rule out. Let's have some gradings. Dan, you can go first here.
I think they've got a lot of work to do. Pleased that they kept the spinners. Need to get a captain. Pant was a big miss. I think it's okay. B.
Ooh. Ross?
C. Nearly, yeah. I think they've shit the bed letting Pant go. So this is just a C purely on the fact that they managed to keep Kuldeep and Akshar. Kuldeep's got a chronic groin injury. Is he going to be able to play the next 3 seasons until they do the next thing? Who knows? And Akshar is really not as good at a bat as they think he is. A C going towards a D if we had that.
Yeah, basically what Ross said. Yeah,
I'm going to go F. I'm going to drop.
Whoa, all the way.
The F-bomb.
Yeah,
bloody hell.
If you screw up retaining Rishabh Pant, I think that's a problem. They didn't have a lot of talent.
Be an F, haven't they? Someone has.
They didn't have a lot of talent, and they've managed to get rid of their most talented player and do it in a way where it's really highly unlikely they'll be able to get him back. And the next best option to replace him is Ishan Kishan, who is, a different caliber of cricketer, I would say, if to put it slightly politely.
I think it's not necessarily fair to always criticise a franchise for not retaining a player until we know the circumstances surrounding the decision, because it may well be that I know players do this. This is 100% a thing, and probably happens a little bit more than what people think when it comes to not players not being retained. The player just doesn't want to get retained. The player might not.
I totally understand that.
Yeah,
I understand that, but I'm saying, objectively speaking, if you were playing Football Manager where personalities don't really matter, you turned off social interactions from Football Manager, and it was a cricket version of Football Manager, so you've got to do 2 leaps of faith here. The first thing you do if you're Delhi is retain Rishabh Pant. 1, so that you've got Rishabh Pant, but 2, so no one else has got him. Now someone else is going to have him as well, and you're going to be, I don't know, hoping that Shreyas Iyer gets good or something like that. I mean, that's what's going to happen, isn't it? They remember that Shreyas Iyer took them to a final 4 years ago, and they're probably lining up a bid for him to get the band back together or whatever. Anyway, let's take a break. We'll come back and crack on with some of the teams in the top half of the table.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Cricket Podcast, where we're talking IPL retentions. If you've maybe tuned in for some talk on the ongoing India v New Zealand series, I'm sorry to disappoint you. Good day for New Zealand, probably overall though, but I reckon they might lose. And I thought that in every one of those Test matches, and they won them all. So maybe they're going to win. Who knows? we'll talk about that another time. Let's get on with the top half of the table. We're on to the Chennai Super Kings. Max, so you will be going first here because we want your opinions, but
Yeah.
I'll run through
Beautiful yellow
the
boys.
key facts. Gaikwad, Jadeja, Patarana, Dubé, Dhoni retained 55 crore out of 120 to spend at the auction. They've got one right to match on whoever they want. It's bye-bye to Devon Conway, Chahar, Tikshana, Deshpande, Shardul Thakur, he's out the door as well. Rachin Ravindra, adios. Mitchell Santner. They had the chance after his magic the other day to make a last-minute change, and they said no. See you later, Mitch. Max, that's got to be a real kick in the teeth. No Mitchell Santner.
It's ruined the whole lot, isn't it? So it's a lot of money, isn't it? That's the obviously the headline. Gaikwad at 18, Jadeja at 18, both big, but it's your captain, and it's an all-rounder who's also an electric fielder. He's a triple threat. Maybe not that exciting with the bat, but again,
he's an old man, said Ross on the last podcast.
Yeah, but
he's over the hill. Bad retention.
You look at the way CSK play and where they play, and it makes more sense than necessarily on paper. I think Patarana is key to the way they approach their bowling attack, and Shivam Dubé is key to the way they like to structure their batting lineups. And to be able to get MS Dhoni back at 4 crore, that's just a little laugh all the way to the bank, isn't it? Is he still worth 4 crore? Probably not. But it's MS Dhoni. You're not getting rid of him. And
he wasn't bad last year, to be fair to him. To be fair,
he had his moments. So overall, I think it's fairly sensible. It's like the core of a team that has served them quite well. But they don't have a huge amount of money to play with, and they do have quite a bit to replace. But I mean, some of the guys that they're replacing are some seam bowlers who were absolutely hopeless for most of the time. So it's not like there'll be too much of a downgrade on anything. And they have, they've retained mostly domestic players. So they've got flexibility to go for some of the overseas players. I think it's fine. Really, I think it's fine.
Fine. That's what Max says. We had a super chat on this. Dan, you can answer this. If you were CSK, it's from Andy, would you go hard for Ashwin and Chahal, get a foreign quick and 2 foreign batters to complement the existing team? Is that the route they're going to take, or have Chennai, Dhoni, Fleming? I don't think Gaikwad's officially in the think tank, even though he's the captain. Have they got something else up their sleeve?
Look, one thing I've noticed with this CSK team is that they like to bat deep, and they've already retained Patarana, who doesn't bat. So I think that Chahal might be a little bit too much of a non-bowler, non-batter, sorry, I should say, for them. Ashwin, I can definitely see at CSK. Like,
he's old enough.
For me, I think it's a good fit for both player and franchise. And that wouldn't shock me in the slightest. In terms of the overseas breakdown that Andy asked about, look, I think that they probably do need a foreign quick and at least one foreign batter, maybe an all rounder. They've lost a lot of the all round talent they had. For example, Ravindra, Moeen Ali. So maybe they might look to go down that road. Daryl Mitchell as well. So there's a few holes there that they're going to have to fill with their overseas signings. And look, I think that I'm going to say it now. I think Ashwin to CSK could be a thing.
Ashwin to CSK, Ross, would that break your heart?
No, Pierce Chawla joining him.
Someone in the chat's already said that as well. Right at the same time. Yeah.
So I think, from a CSK perspective, they had a pretty decent side, but they always managed to put together a good team. Like by hook or by crook, they managed to do it. They have an emotional pick here and there, and the guy who's just clearly the order taker at the table was kind of just like completely clueless, but press the button kind of thing. But I think they've got something to work with there. I think Patarana has got a good future, right? I think he's a difference maker, bowls differently, and they clearly see him as the Malinga 2.0, and they've got the Dube. I do think that it was inevitable that they would retain Jadeja. I just think 18 crore, it's quite expensive, but you don't want him going to other teams. Like a left arm spinner who bats really well is there. They might just need to have him in a bit of a different role to what they've played him in before. So, yeah, not a bad place, and they've got a right to match of one of their players. So, yeah, let's not rule out the Moeen Ali coming back.
My take on this is that they haven't made any mistakes.
Yeah.
And I think that means that it's good. Like they obviously they've released some good players, but I don't think there's anyone there where I'm like,
what are you
that's
doing?
an irreplaceable individual there. Yeah, they could
teams were genuinely changing their whole strategy to try and nullify the Doob last season. Like they literally were completely changing their game plan when he came to bat. Like for you're just like, this guy is.
They
good.
also got him budget 12 crore for Doob. Might be, and we know he's Dubé. If you've not been around for the podcast for a while, there's a drum called the Doob, made by ex-England footballer Dion Dublin, and it's much funnier to call him the Doob after that. But 12 crore, that might be the best priced or best value retention of the lot.
That's a bold shout.
Yeah. So I'm gonna we'll do some grading, shall we? I'm gonna give them an A. I might regret that, but I think at least early in this cycle they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. Dan, you can go next. I think you might have a different opinion.
B. I think Dhoni at 4 really helps them, but I'm not a buyer of Jadeja at 18 at all. He's 36 next month, 3-year cycle. Mm-hmm. I think dwindling returns, not having that at all. And I think that's an emotional decision. I think Paterano, I really like Paterano, but I think that was expensive as well. I think
it was
his
expensive.
market value wouldn't be anyway.
Roscoe.
Yeah, I'm with Dan. I think a B is in that space, and reservations. I really hope that Jadeja proves me wrong. Like he's an absolutely a box office player, but for the next 3 years or however long this will, is there going to be another mega auction? Is one of those things, right? So it's a big decision, but I like that one.
Max?
Yeah, also a B from me. I said fine at the top, and I think that translates to a B. I think I'm happy with it, but I'm not bouncing off the walls. Then again, they came 5th, right? So
it's all right. It's one away from where you want to be. Let's move on. Royal Challengers Bengaluru. It's nice that these two have been paired up with each other in this podcast. They came from nowhere to make the playoffs last year. Literally nowhere. They were terrible. And then they were quite good. 3 retentions. Virat Kohli, he gets the big bucks. 21 crore I've got on my screen here. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe it was 23 and I've written that down wrong. Not sure. Rajat Patidar and 21. Okay, all right, well, there we go. Shouldn't have corrected myself. Should have just ploughed on. And Yash Dayal. So 3 players, all domestic. That will leave them 83 crore, which is quite a lot of money for RCB to probably waste at the auction. They've long since given up trying to win the IPL, and now they're just in it for the entertainment value, and I'm there for that, to be honest. 3 right to matches, 1 uncapped, 2 capped. They got rid of some fairly big names, but not necessarily players who did massive things to them last year. So no Big Show Maxwell on the retentions list. Mohammad Siraj, he had his down year, so he'll be good again this year, but they've got rid of him. The captain's gone. Cameron Green's gone. All of the spinners picked by AI, they're gone.
Khan Sharma, no!
Probably a good thing, that. Max, have you been first for a while? I don't think you have. Talk to us about RCB. Okay, Dan, have you been first? Dan, you go first. RCB, talk to us.
I think they've got a lot of work to do, obviously, with those 3 retentions. Second biggest purse though behind Punjab. A few questions that I'd have. I mean, obviously, we don't know the thought process and the politics and the decisions that went around the retentions. I think that Kohli is expensive if he's not going to captain. I really think they have to have him captain, otherwise they're going to spend a lot of money on bringing in another captain when they've already got a potential captain who's expensive. I think that they've got enough money to be able to build a good bowling attack for one of the first times ever, but they'll probably end up spending half of it on Pant and KL Rahul between them or something like that. You can just see that happening. Siraj going was a surprise, no doubt about that. I thought they might have twisted on Maxwell or Cameron Green. I personally would have let both of them go, and I think it's a good decision that they've done that. But then also, if they were so much in favour of Cameron Green as a player and a prospect, I know he's a bit injured at the moment, but still, it's a 3-year cycle at least, and he's young. Why did they bring him in to start with last year? Like, they facilitated the whole MI Hardik trade by taking Cameron Green, and they haven't even kept him. Sounds just so weird.
They've come out and said it's because he's injured, Dan. So they've kind of said, look, we can't risk him not playing for the entire season, so we get rid of him. Which I think is quite an easy excuse, if I'm perfectly honest.
Well, because it's easy. You're absolutely right, and I think that would they have committed to keeping him if he wasn't injured? And I don't think the answer is yes either for that. So as you say, convenient. Jax is another one who I think that I was a little bit surprised about, but maybe a bit down the pecking order. But a lot of work to do. They've got to get some bowlers. They've got to do it this time.
I'd have released
everyone. They've got Yash Dayal.
I would have released everyone in this team. Like if
everyone.
They
made the playoffs.
Yeah, I've just released everyone. It would have been far funnier if you were RCB, if they were just released everyone. We do have a question in from Ricken from our Patreon of what is worse, RCB not keeping Siraj or Rajasthan Royals not keeping one of Yuzi Chahal or Joss Butler. Max, where do you sit on that?
That's a good question. I think probably for me, Yuzi Chahal is marginally worse, but I mean we'll get to that. I think not retaining Siraj is a big mistake though. Like
they can write to match him.
They can write to match him, and they've got a lot of money, so they can maybe they're thinking they'll get a good deal on him. But there are some teams out there that might just spend a bunch of money on it, and they'll decide I don't want it. But on paper, it seems odd for sure.
I think it could go one or two ways. I don't think there's a middle ground for RCB.
No,
I think it's lots of money on KL Rahul in a bidding war with Punjab or something bizarre like that. I mean, way more than you're thinking in your head. Yeah,
we spent 35 crore. How have we done that on KL Rahul?
An astronomical amount of money on KL Rahul. I can definitely see that coming. But
then the LSG come in and right to match him for 35.
Or they pull a few fast ones. Maybe they get Will Jacks back cheap on right to match. Maybe they get Siraj back cheap on right to match, and then they end up with sort of 65 crore or something really good like that to build the rest of their team.
Yeah.
And then they come back with like a Death Star. Don't see a middle ground. I think this is it's going to be interesting. Let's have some grades. I'm going to go with a C, I think.
This is an F for me. I don't like it.
F?
I just don't think Kohli's not a good T20 player. 21 crore on him is ridiculous. Like, this literally pure brand rather than actually trying to win the competition. And Yash Dayal is, him and Patidar. Patidar did well last year. Yash Dayal I don't really care about. Missing out on Siraj is just a bit silly. And letting someone like Glenn Maxwell or Will Jacks, either one, they've got someone who they can actually go, right, this is the person in our team who either opens the batting or is really explosive and can give us at least 2 overs of spin. I just think it's a bit of a weird strategy and not very good. F for me for RCB.
Max?
Yeah, I do think it is bad, but I'm not going to give it an F because I think you literally can't release Kohli from a real money point of view, not fake IPL crore money. Actual money that the company that owns RCB are trying to make. You can't get rid of Virat Kohli. It's literally impossible. So from that point of view, it's just a C, but I still think it's risky and a bit weird.
I think, honestly, who knows what's happening behind the scenes. 21 crore to have Kohli play for your cricket team for the best part of 3 months is unbelievable business from a making money point of view. There's an absolute A from that perspective. But yeah, cricket, not so sure. Dan, we've all gone quite low here. Are you going to buck the trend?
Not. It's a bit similar to Punjab in that they've got a lot of money, but they've got a lot of holes to fill. And I'm not confident of them doing it in an effective way.
They've only got one less hole to fill than Punjab, and quite a lot less money to do it.
Yeah, agree. I'm gonna go with a C because I just don't have faith in them assembling a good bowling attack again. And Siraj was a strange miss, and someone in the chat said that was a franchise decision, which is really quite surprising.
Cool. We're going to do one more team with me, then we're going to take a break, and I have to go. So someone else, Max, is going to steer the ship home. Rajasthan Royals, though, are the next team up for discussion. They had a pretty good cycle last time round. Played some attractive cricket, and they had a decent squad to choose from here. This is what they decided to do. They kept Sanju Samson, they kept Jaiswal, they kept Parag, they kept Dhruv Jarrell, they kept Shimron Hetmeyer, they kept Sandeep Sharma. They spent a lot of money. They'll only have 41 crore at the auction, but they do have 6 players. That means they can't right to match anyone. It also means it's sayonara to Chahal, Butler, Ashwin.
Oh,
interesting scenes, Ross.
Yeah, I'm glad you come to me first, as I am a Rajasthan Royals fan. And do you know what? I wish I wasn't. And I really wish that Rahul Dravid didn't come out and say, we tried our best to keep the band together and we're going to go really hard for them at the auction. Like, 1, keep your cards close to your chest. And 2, it kind of feels like you're a bit of a soppy bastard after a breakup. Like, literally, like, pull yourself together, man. And Hetmeyer for 11 crore is bonkers. The bloke faced 69 balls last season. 11 crore for what is he's relatively limited, right, in what they're using him for. Jarrell at 14 crore is an absolute stack of cash, where I'm not convinced they would have gone for that in the auction. And yeah, overall, like it was important to keep hold of Sanju, important to keep hold of Jaiswal. Like Rian Parag is Rian Parag, right? But I'm gutted to see Josh Butler leave this franchise. The guy's in the top 5, maybe top 3 T20 batters in the world on his day. Yes, he's been inconsistent a little bit, but he's also dragged Rajasthan Royals past some pretty imperious opponents. Overall, I'm quite disappointed of what they've got left to do in this space, regardless of how good Jaiswal and Samson are.
Dan, are you going to come back and tell Ross he's wrong?
I'm not. No. Look,
Boo.
I don't understand. I don't understand the Hetmeyer retention at all. And if you're looking at utility of player as the sole thing, if let's say for sake of argument you have a choice between Hetmeyer and Butler at the same price, I cannot see any logical argument for Hetmeyer whatsoever. I can't even. I genuinely didn't even think for 1 minute that they would retain him. I do think that I don't rate him as highly as others. I saw him at first hand 100 as well, and I wasn't hugely impressed. And I think that there's a lot of mean reversion to come in terms of his performance at RR as well, where he's probably overperformed what he has done for West Indies, for example, and certainly in the 100 as well. The interesting thing with RR I noticed is that they kept 6 players, which was the maximum amount of retentions, and only them and KKR did that. But it fits in with a sort of a mentality point of view that I've got on them, in that they're a team that really values certainty. Because what I noticed, in example, in the 2022 mega auctions, they got their business done pretty early and then bought a stack of cheap overseas players right at the end because they had holes to fill. Then in last year's auction, they bought Rovman Powell for big money, basically burnt their budget on the first pick of the whole auction.
Yeah, worst pick of the auction.
They clearly value stability and in their terms of their planning and getting the business done and that certainty. And it's interesting that the Tashan has also mentioned that in the chat, saying he's talking about planned spending versus sentiment spending. And now RR have got the lowest purse going into the auction, and I still think they've got a lot of holes to fill. Dhruv Jurel as well, 14 crore, just doesn't make any sense. They've got basically no bowlers, so they've gone from having like a group, probably the best bowling group in the tournament last year in 2024, to having Sandeep Sharma this year. And
who wasn't even picked up in the auction. He literally was a replacement player.
Yeah, he did quite well in the end. The certainty point. Do you think that has any bearing on why they didn't retain Jos Buttler? With the fact that I think in the last 2 years at least, he's ended up not being there for the knockout stages because of England commitments.
Yeah,
do you think
100%.
that factors in?
Well, no English players got retained, and I think that's a big factor.
Yeah, tells you a lot.
The team mentality. Yeah, 100%. And this is one of the many sort of push and pull factors that we're going to see in terms of player availability over the next cycle and in years to come. And actually, there's going to be a breaking point eventually where English players or Australian players who have their workloads consistently managed by their boards are going to turn down central contracts because the money that they're losing in the IPL is just too much. That's going to be a big talking point, I think, in the future. But even then, if you couldn't, even if you didn't want Buttler for that reason, I still would have ditched Hetmeyer, and I wouldn't have paid Jurel half that money.
Right, grading. Ross, you can go first.
F.
F.
Fuck 'em.
Max, you can go second.
You know what? I'm leaning there. If there were a D, I'd go for a D, but there isn't. So I'm going to join you. I haven't done an F yet. I'm going, fuck it. F. Yeah. Hetmeyer, terrible.
I love Samson. I love Samson. Love Jaiswal, but come on, guys.
Ram Parag was good as well last year. It's a lot of money on batters.
I am going to go for a C. I don't think they're as bad as you two think. I think all of those players will be in their starting 11. They have to find.
They've still got good players there, right?
You think?
So
yeah, that's what I mean.
They've still got good players, but some of the decisions they've made are so obviously terrible, but they've still ended up with a good side. So it's like I guess it depends what you're grading, right? What they've ended up with or what they did.
Well, they could have had.
Yeah, they could have done things differently. Yeah. Dan, go on. A, B, C, or F?
I would have. I was very similar to Max. Actually, I would have said D if I was allowed to. I don't think a team with Samson, Jaiswal, and Parag can be an F, but I really don't like the way that they've constructed these retentions, and I think that it's going to be extremely difficult for them to construct a good bowling attack. And we know that that's what wins tournaments. I'm going to lean towards C rather than F, but I would definitely have gone with a D if I was allowed to.
Right, we're going to take a break. When I come back, it will be Max. Goodbye, everyone, from me, and enjoy the final two teams, the finalists from last year. You know what I mean. Sunrisers Hyderabad and Kolkata Knight Riders.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Cricket Podcast. Max Rowe Brown is in the hot seat, and we've got to sort out the graphics. We've got to sort out the audio. It's all going haywire, but that's exactly what we want at this point in time. Dan, we've got 2 teams left, is it? Which one should we go to first? Is it the Mighty Sunrisers as runners-up?
I think so. Yeah, let's do that.
Cool. Okay. Well, KKR, Sunrisers, KKR was the final last year, and it was. It was a barnstorming tournament for both of them. Let's be honest. And when it comes to Sunrisers, they are one that we have been a little bit critical of over the time that we've run this podcast. I think it's probably fair to say. But they have ended up retaining 5 players. The best batter in the world, potentially, is Heinrich Klaassen. They've given him 23 crore, which makes him the highest paid retained player. Cumdog Millionaire comes in at 18 crore. Pat Cummins is their captain. Abhishek Sharma, who lit up the competition last year, is in 14 crore. Travis Head is their other overseas, completing the 3 contingent more than any other team. and Nitish Kumar Reddy, who is touted for big things. Also picks up 6 crore as a retention as the uncapped player. They've got 45 crore out of their 120 remaining, with 1 right to match on an uncapped player. And it's a bit of a ripping up of what we've seen from Sunrisers Hyderabad, I think it's probably fair to say. Bhuvi Kumar is gone. Natarajan is gone. The core of the Indian contingent is ultimately gone here. Max, Sunrisers, they've been a joke, but here, have they been quite smart with what they've done?
You know what? So when they were like one of the first teams to come out, weren't they, Sunrisers, with what they'd retained? And like, my initial reaction to it was, yeah, I mean, great. Look, they've got this star-studded lineup. These astounding cricketers. Sunrisers, what a team they're going to be. What a force they're going to be. And now I'm processing it a bit more, and I'm a bit worried about Sunrisers because they've got Heinrich Klaasen and they've spent 23 crore on Heinrich Klaasen. And yeah, he's dynamite and he will win you games on his own, but that's a lot of money, especially when Pat Cummins is 18 crore and Abhishek Sharma is 14 crore and Travis Head is 14 crore. Again, he will win you games on his own. And the pair of them at the top of the order last year did some unbelievable things together, but it's not always going to happen. And they've got an entire bowling unit, Pat Cummins aside, to fill up. I think Nitish Kumar Reddy at 6 crore is a great retention. That's like a really, promising player who's dual skilled. So that's a great bit of work. But they've retained 3 expensive overseas players who are going to play every single game, which means they have to pretty much construct, an entire middle order and bowling lineup out of domestic players. And that's going to be really difficult to do with 45 crore left in the bank. So I think they're going to be in a position where they're going to have a pretty lopsided team. And I don't think that's going to suit them that well in terms of winning a tournament. So I started really bullish on them. And the more I thought about it, the less excited I am for them. And I'm now veering into the world of quite serious concern for what could happen.
Okay. Well, I like the explosive approach, what they've gone with. Dan, where do you sit on the matter?
I'm actually okay with it. Cyber Gava has a really good point in the chat, actually. So one of the notes I made was that Carson was the most expensive retention league at 23, which is obviously true. He mentions in the chat that they had to spend 75 crore anyway when they retained 5 cap players, which is true. So they've split the pie a little bit more. And even if they can't give less to Klaasen, they still can't take that extra amount. So even if they give less to Klaasen, they can't take the extra amount into the auction. So I'm kind of more fine with it. And actually, they've probably paid more for Klaasen than the market value, but they've also managed to get Abhishek and Travis Head for 14 each, which I think, based on other teams' retentions and how much they've paid for guys like Jadeja and Rinku Singh and Chakravarti and Rohit Sharma, Kohli, these type of players that actually 14 crore for Abhishek and Travis Head is actually pretty good business a piece. I think Nitish Kumar Reddy needs to get a new agent, because I'm telling you right now, he'd have gone for way more than 6 in the auction. And so he's done himself out of a bit of money there. They've got a lot of holes to fill still, though, especially bowling wise. 45 crore just to do it, and that's going to be tricky. Do I think that they've had to keep these players? Like, I don't see that they really had any option. As we said, 75 crore is what they had to spend to keep 5 cap players. So they really have a choice. It's all about what they do with that 45 now, the rest of it. And that's going to be tricky. There's going to be a few teams that could probably push them around a little bit in the auction. They're going to have to be smart. I'm excited to see what they do, actually.
Yeah, I actually quite like what they've done overall. And actually, I think, as you said, they've actually done the sensible thing of going, right, this is what worked for us last time. Like, they were amazing to watch last year. Like, absolutely amazing. And like completely different to what we experienced before. So, I think it's not too bad. Where are we going to rate them, guys? For me, I'm going to give them a B. I think there's a lot left to do, as you said, Dan. but they've got the core retained. So I'm going to go for a B. Max?
Yeah, it probably is still a B, given what you said, about the fact that they were dynamite last year, and they've kept most of the players that made them dynamite. But I am still, like Swami said in the chat, you've got to find 8 Indian starters for 45 crore pretty much, which is going to be tough. But they, if they're smart, it's not impossible. So I'll give them a B. But
Okay, and Dan?
I would say 2 things. First of all, they don't have to find 8 starters from India for 45 crore because they already have Nitish Kumar already and Abhishek Sharma. So it's really 6 for 45. 6 for 45, right? Well, five really. With another...
Don't forget the impact player.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe 5 plus an impact and an overseas for 45. That's doable. Definitely doable. You might have. I love this phrase that Ross said years ago, and I still say it all the time. They might have to have a few guys that just sit on the bus, but they can. They can do it.
They'll be costing 30 lakh now, though. So.
Yeah, 30 lakh. That's what Arjun Tendulkar's going to get as well this year. He got that last year as well. Yeah. I'm going to go B. I think that it's pretty much played itself out, and now we've got to see how they spend that 45 really astutely at the auction.
Fair enough. Max, do you want to talk us through KKR?
Yep, will do. It was good when we came back from the last break. I was just in the middle of resetting all of the backgrounds and everything to get it in place so that it was seamlessly transitioned when Jack left, and then my internet cut out while I was doing it, and we were stuck with some weird boxes. So I'm sorry about that. But anyway, yes, the winners, last year's winners, KKR, and if the Sunrisers have retained 5 players of their star-studded lineup, KKR have gone the whole hog, and they've retained the full 6. But it's quite interesting how it's been done. They've got Rinku Singh for 13 crore, Varun Chakravarti for 12 crore, Sunil Narine is 12 crore, Andre Russell is also 12 crore, and then Harshit Rana and Ramandeep Singh, both 4 crore apiece. So that means Mitchell Stark, most expensive player ever, is gone. Phil Salt, who last-minute replacement for Jason Roy and got things going alongside Sunil Narine at the top of the order, he's also gone. So they've lost some, but they've still got 51 crore left. Somehow, I think because they've kept 2 uncapped rather than just the 1. And it's I guess that they've kept the core of what did well, but you can't look past some of the numbers in the age column, can you, Ross? What do you think?
Sunil Narine and Andre Russell, they both had brilliant years last year, right? Sunil Narine in particular was back being an absolute beast, opening up the batting and also supplying 4 measly overs. But it is a risk. Andre Russell has had injury problems, but you can't, in my opinion, when it comes to the IPL, you can't let Sunil Narine go in that space. He's like a cheat code. And not all athletes age the same. So you look at someone like Wayne Rooney, for example. He aged an awful lot because he started his career quite young and actually ran himself into the dirt, didn't have anything left in his knees, and was there. Sunil Narine doesn't do any running in any cricket. He's kind of fine. He's going to live forever, Sunil Narine. So he could probably play in the IPL till he's like 45, 50. So I don't think that's a bad thing at all. It may be a little bit expensive for those, but it is what it is. Rinku Singh really didn't bat last year. That's why he missed out on the India he missed out on the India T20 squad because they just didn't need him. But he is an exceptional player, and I think they've done really quite well to get people to accept lower amounts, which I think means that they get the 51 crore limit, but it also means that they're also being cheapskates, right? So I'm not sure where that money goes because the money just kind of disappears.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit, it's a little bit confusing. Dan, where's your thought process? They obviously let go of Shreyas Iyer, Venki Iyer as well, and Nitish Rana. So that domestic contingent, who no doubt will be quite popular in the auction table.
Yeah, look, I actually think that KKR done some really, really good business here, and probably broadly in line with what I might have thought about if I was there. As mentioned, I have an issue with the age of some of their players. And I think that's probably the one question mark that I really do have in terms of how Narayan, Russell, Chakravarti are going to progress across this longer cycle. And then people say, well, it doesn't matter about a long cycle with old players. Well, it does, because the quality of players who you can replace them with midway through a cycle just isn't there. So actually, you have to be really cognizant of understanding what players' likely expected performance level is going to be in year 3 of the cycle. It's not just about year 1 of the cycle of what they've done in the past. I think I like the release of Shreyas Iyer. I think it would have cost a lot of money, and I think that he wouldn't have fitted into their retention strategy. Nitish Rana, I'm okay with, because he didn't play much last time. I think that it was obvious they were going to move on for him. Stark will be interesting to see whether that was a commitment to play issue, in terms of, maybe he didn't want to register. Venki Iyer, I think, as well, was a no-brainer. What I do love is that the Ramandeep Singh and Harshit Rana retentions are like as good a value as you'll ever see in terms of retentions in the IPL. Unbelievable business. I also like the nice even distribution of salaries for their cap players, which helps with team unity. And they've covered various skill sets as well with these 6 returns. So they've got a lot of bases covered. They've got stuff to fill still, but I think that they're in a good place to do it with 51 crore, and they've already got 6 starters in their team. So yeah, good work.
Yeah, I'd actually forgotten what Ramandeep Singh even did last year, because everything was just top down.
Well, you always thought it was Rinku Singh batting, didn't you? You saw R Singh on the screen. You was like, it must be Rinku.
Exactly. And then he only faced 62 balls, but he hit 12 sixes. That's outrageous. That is absolutely outrageous. So I mean, that's potentially great value. So grading then, it's the last team, KKR, the winners. We're grading them. What are you giving them, Ross? What are you saying?
I think they've done really well here, actually. So I'm going to say that the champs, purely on the fact that they've got a bit of the age cycle. Like Andre Russell, will more likely prove me wrong saying this, but does Andre Russell have 2 or 3 years in him at the highest level? Not quite sure. So I'm going to give them a B, but still, it's a pretty good retention from the champs.
Dan?
Would have been an A if it wasn't for the player age kind of question marks. I'm going A-.
A-. All right. Yeah, I think I'll probably go B, higher end of B for, same sort of reasons, really. Like, if there's this kind of weird paradox on the one hand, I don't feel like you can retain Sunil Narayan on the basis of what he did last year, because it just doesn't feel like that's ever going to happen again. It hasn't even come close to it since the IPL. But at the same time, how could you not retain Sunil Narayan after he did what he did last year? It's impossible. It's an impossible situation. So I think they've done well. I think looking forward to seeing what they do. Good mix, and it should be fun. So KKR, not done a bad job at all. So that's everyone. Everyone's done. I think where did we land overall? And who do we think has done the best job? Who do we think has done the worst job? Just to round this off a little bit, and then I think there's probably some questions that we wanted to get to round off, Dan, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. For me, best jobs, KKR, Gujarat, and then maybe Sunrisers and Lucknow would be my 4 winners. I think that Punjab could be a winner if they a smart auction.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Yeah. Who's the losers, Ross? That's always nice one to throw to you. You like having a go?
Rajasthan Royals. I don't literally. I'm not convinced they've done the right thing there. And there's some just middling pieces like Delhi. I'm just meh. Like letting Rishabh Pant go is just bonkers behaviour. So, but it is what it is. But overall, Max, there's some interesting themes I think from the entire piece. There's obviously. There should have been, and there is, a heavy domestic bias because of the scarcity of resource. So that's unsurprising to see. It was good to see very different approaches play out because some of the teams have ripped up and started again in Punjab Kings and RCB, but they're giving themselves those right to matches, whereas KKR, Rajasthan Royals going, nope, we've got this core. That's what we want to try and complete. There's been a captain's massacre. I think it's probably the only way to put it. Faf gone from RCB. King Legend goes from NSG. I know kind of shared the captaincy really around there. Shikhar Dhawan goes, not even mentioned in ESPN's big player releases, Shikhar Dhawan, so it shows how much they rate
Just
him.
like Shande was, though.
Yep, so there we go.
Dhawan is retired, so like he's.
Is he
he's not
is he
gonna
actually retired? Oh, I didn't realise he'd retired.
Yeah.
So there we go. Okay, fine. Sorry.
Maybe that's what I didn't mention.
Egg on my face. That's fair enough. Pant goes from Delhi, and then Shreyas Iyer goes from KKR. So that go there. And then the millionaire maker. We've got to highlight it, right? There were people on base price pickup. Rinku Singh, Patadar, Mayank, Sai Siddharth. These guys were on less than 50 lakh, and they are now millionaires. So the IPL makes dreams come true. We've got one or two questions from Patreon just to highlight, and then Dan will come on to your Substack guys and girls. Alex asks, what do you think about KKR deliberate underpaying their players in the retentions? Could this affect player morale? Dan, I kind of thought the opposite, actually, on that front. And you kind of said as much, right? They've actually got quite a small group there. What do you think on that front?
No, I don't think it's going to affect team player morale, because actually you've got 4 guys on broadly the same amount of money at the top end, and I very much doubt that they're going to be in a position to spend much more than that on one player in the auction as well. I think that the Ramandeep and Harshit Rana, I should say, are still at 4, and maybe actually if you're looking at morale, they've gone below their market value at the auction. And Ramandeep was definitely a player. I think he was on 20 lakh in the last cycle, so he's probably someone who probably might have wanted a little more. Perhaps could have
Don't be greedy. Don't be greedy, but literally, I think it'll probably be an IPL 2025. Under the table is going to become a little bit of a saying on this podcast. The money's getting under the table is important. Dave asked, in light of Pant not getting retained, who is the most valuable player? He's asked ever available for an auction, but let's do it for the IPL 2025. Who do we think is going to be? So if Pant is going to be the most expensive, who do we think is going to be second? Max, start with you.
Oh, that's a good question. I'm glad you've at least restricted it to this year, because that's a tough one. It's hard to look past. I think Mohammad Siraj is going to be up there just because that elite fast bowling approach, and maybe someone like Shami or Arshdeep, just another Indian pacer. Indian pacers are always, tough to get hold of and super valuable. So one of those could be up there. And also Sam Curran's available, and he's a good guy to get.
He makes things happen. Dan,
look, I think we said earlier that Pant's gonna. I think we all think that he's going to go for most at the auction. 2 players who I think will fight that will be Arshdeep, because I think that teams are going to really push Punjab to retain him or use a right to match on him, because they're going to see that as a way of burning the budget advantage that they have. And Siraj, I also think, because the high quality domestic paces are just don't exist really, and those 2 players are definitely two of the better pacers in the auction pool. I also think that Sam Curran, someone could easily take pay a load for Sam Curran, and it also wouldn't shock me if someone paid a load for Glenn Maxwell or Cameron Green as well.
Josh Buttler, not even mentioned by you two there. Do you reckon he's going to be in the shout for it, or do you reckon his IPL days are now done with the England commitments that we're kind of seeing?
Someone's got to go in for Josh Buttler, but I don't think he's going to be that high up, is he?
I don't think he's done, but I think that the negative England tax is a thing right now.
Mm-hmm. Fair. Okay. We've answered the other questions. Dan, what do your wonderful followers have to ask you and ask us on the show?
Okay, so I have a couple of things that I really want to say. I've actually kind of got some thoughts and stats that I thought I'd read out before we go, and I just wanted to say as well, like, you guys in the chat have been unbelievable today. I actually have problems logging in, so I couldn't reply to any of the questions. But what I've done is I've noted them all down, and I'm gonna try, and there's about 20 of them that I've written down, and I'm going to try and answer them on like a Twitter mega thread or a Substack, because they're such good questions. I think I really enjoyed reading them, so thank you for that. Some stats. Okay, 46 retentions, 4.6 per team, with 77% of retention slots used. Now, that was down from 84% of retention slots used ahead of the 2022 mega auction. So actually, teams are becoming a little bit more ruthless and not quite as wedded to their players as maybe they were previously. So that's interesting. 36 domestics, 10 overseas were the retentions. Mumbai, RCB and Punjab only retained domestics. SRH 3, KKR 2 for overseas players. Mm-hmm. Quick info made a breakdown of the player splits of the retentions. Like, maybe I might have issue with a few of them, but it's a pretty decent guide. 28 of the players who've retained out of 46 were batters, with 7 as all-rounders. So 35 of them have batting value. Now, that's a really, really strange dynamic, because actually it doesn't align with the historical drivers of success at all in T20 leagues. We know that bowling attacks are critical for successful teams. And so retaining a load of batters on big money makes basically no sense. And for me, that hints towards some teams acting with a lot of emotional decision-making mindsets, rather than being kind of clinically strategic, if you like. Only Lucknow and KKR retained 3 or more frontline bowling options. So there's going to, I mean, again, this goes back to the Arshdeep and the Siraj conversations about the supply and demand. When 10 teams or 8 teams want 2 players, look what's going to happen. There's going to be a price war. I'm really surprised that Mumbai in particular, but also SRH, didn't keep an uncapped player, given how relatively cheap they are. Mumbai could have had Wadera, for example. Sunrisers could have had Samad. So that was an interesting decision from those 2 teams. And I think we mentioned this earlier a little bit. The captain hunt. At least 5 teams are going to need captains, possibly 6 or 7.
Careful how you say that, Dan.
And the last thing as well is the 2022 mega auction was in February. And I remember this because I actually, whilst I was in India, I remembered that I needed to send flowers to my wife. And so for Valentine's Day. So I definitely remember it was around Valentine's Day in 2022. And for me, I mean, we took the auction's kind of penciled in for the end of November, which kind of, for me, makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, because Syed Mushtaq Ali Trophy doesn't finish until the 15th of December. So why you would want to hold the auction before the end of the domestic T20 tournament is just completely illogical in my view. However,
people get injured, don't they, as well? People do get injured. There's so much cricket to be played between now and March or whenever it starts.
Teams should want to have the most available information to them at that point, and they can't right now if they have the auction before the end of the SMAT. And I personally, I would have it in January or February. I just think that there's no point in having it between the 15th and 25th of December, because it's Christmas.
You've got something to look forward to after Christmas as well, don't you?
Exactly. And
Ross is
my birthday.
Yeah. New year, new player roster. That's how it should be.
Love it. Dan, any other bits from your Substack?
No, that's all good from my side. Like I said, anyone who's asked questions in the chat, really appreciate that, and I'm going to answer them all on Substack and Twitter. So thank you for them, and I'll have answers for them all in the next day or 2, hopefully.
Fantastic. Well, Dan, thank you ever so much for joining us. Absolutely love having you on the show, and love just covering the IPL on this show. I mean, we are the best podcast at covering the IPL. So subscribe, tell all your friends, put it all over Twitter. There is no better podcast to cover it, because, we just don't really buy into the whole deity thing. So, if you want to hear bad stuff about Kohli, you want to hear bad stuff about Rohit, well, I'm your man. And if you want to hear good stuff about CSK, Max is your man. And if you want to hear a loving on Mumbai, Jack started the show with one. So, here we are. Thank you ever so much for listening, and see you later.